So hi everyone, I'm Laura. I'm going to be in charge of the main stage. So we're going to have a great day of speakers coming up. And to announce the first speaker, we've got Anushka, who has been in the tech ecosystem for over 6 years across USA, Europe, and the UK. She's got a computer background, and she's moved across many different disciplines, including the Olympics, politics, and her most recent adventure is into space. So she's going to be talking to you today about her new company, which is called Naaut, as in astronaut, in case you don't know how to say it, that's how you say it. And she's going to be talking to you about all of her different projects, and the most recent one is with NASA Frontier Development Lab, which is an AI accelerator which brings together AI and space science researchers. So it's going to be a great start to the day. So everyone, if you can welcome Anushka.
Good morning. Amazing. How are you all doing this morning? We made it in this beautiful, wintry first day of December, so I really appreciate you all being here this morning. I'm delighted to be here. There are so many newbies in the audience, and believe it or not, last year's Geek Girl meetup, I was a newbie in the audience, and I also had the opportunity to chair a panel, and I literally jumped for joy when they told me that this was the theme of today's conference, because it was like the stars aligned, and yes, there may be a few space puns that I come up with, but I can't help it, it's the nature of the world that I'm in. So, Naaut is my company, and it really defines the last 4 years of work that I've been doing that I hadn't really been telling the world about because it's my passion. And so, after a lot of meditation and a lot of thought, I decided that I needed to tell the story of why I'm so passionate about space. And so I created Naaut. And I really appreciate you saying the astro part, because it's really hard when you're defining your brand to think about how you project what it becomes. So really, it underlines the last 4 years of work I've been doing in the space sector, of bringing the community together, bringing conversations in that fuzzy space of innovation that is often the invisible part of growing startups and scale-ups when you are bringing people together to have conversations and get business being made. So really, Naaut for me is about frontier tech and innovation for a multi-planetary future. Now, I keep my conversations very much Earth-based. Today, I don't have to do that. I'm going to take you through our solar system, the galaxy, and who knows, beyond. So, who am I? I thought I won't bore you anymore with my bio, but I wanted to show you this picture of me 21 years ago as a teenager at the Kennedy Space Center. And my journey with space started when I was given a t-shirt when I was 7 years old that had the shuttle on it, and it was from the Kennedy Space Center. So it literally took a t-shirt to inspire me to want to build a future in the space sector. I just didn't know how to get there. 18 years later, this picture is taken at the Vandenberg Air Force Base in California. And it's where you might have heard that SpaceX and NASA have had some launches. And I'm nervous, gosh. It's because I'm so passionate to tell you my story, and I really appreciate this platform. I never thought that the work that I'd done in social media would qualify me to have an invitation by NASA to be invited to the launch of this satellite. And so it gets me really emotional because it was really that 18-year journey and longer from being a 7-year-old aspiring to be in the space sector. And that really was what the mechanism was for the emotion in my voice. But genuinely, the passion that I had for the space sector. And gosh, I didn't realize I'd get this emotional. That is the rocket before it was rolled out. So this is the slow mechanism of taking it on the tracks and onto the launch pad before it goes and eventually launches. And in between, I've worked in politics, as you've heard, I've worked in the Olympic Stadium, and I've been passionate about technology. And about 4 years ago, I got to try Google Glass, and you can tell I've made my own slides because I screenshot an Instagram photo with only 4 likes. And what I wanted to tell you is that's okay, because if you persevere with your passion, it doesn't matter that no one else understands it. At some point in time, people will start taking note of your passion. And so I like to think that that starts. And I think For millennia, we've all looked up at the night sky and we've gazed at the planets and we've looked up and we've wondered, you know, what is out there? Who are we? Like, who am I? And I truly believe that because of that, we as humans, we are explorers. And we've scaled the Himalayas, we've scaled Mount Everest and Snowdon, or Ben Nevis if that's your choice. But there's a will in us to want to explore further afield from just our regular high street or wherever we've grown up. And I think in the future, and even now, space is the equalizer. We've got a long way to go still, but the great thing is the work we've all been doing in the technology sector and the creative sector and design thinking, all of these parts play a big part in the future role for the space industry. And that's why I say that space is the equalizer, because I am determined to make my voice known now about how I want it to be a diverse space that everybody should have access to. So whether your country that you were born in has a space agency or not, it shouldn't mean that you can't be a future astronaut. And what I'm loving now is that there's a trend going towards public-private partnerships and an amazing startup ecosystem called the New Space sort of ecosystem that is bringing together new players. And there's loads of them, not only in the UK ecosystem, but also in the wider, in the world, basically. So the universe is massive. The potential is immense. In our lifetime, we wouldn't even be able to cover an iota of it. So there's a lot of stuff to discover yet. And this picture was taken in 1968 from the moon. So if you've ever watched the sunset and see the moonrise, well, this is an astronaut on the surface of the moon taking a picture of the Earth rising. And it's an iconic time for the moon because next year marks the 50th year of the lunar landing. So I'm seeing heads nodding, which is awesome. So there's going to be a lot happening and a lot of coverage around the lunar landings, but it's been an epic week for NASA. They've actually announced on Thursday their program to go back to the moon. And actually what that will mean is a sort of system of helping us become more interplanetary and being able to have a stopgap, not only to help understand the lunar surface and how that is working with Earth, but also helping us to go further and explore Mars and beyond, which I'll come on to shortly. So we've got lots of different launch vehicles, which are the types of rockets that can take us into space, but we also have the potential lunar orbiting platform, which had a different name until very recently, and it was called the Deep Space Platform, which I think was cooler. But that's a public-private partnership with NASA and the European Station, which is going to help unlock the moon for us even more than we've had it before. And I just love this image of the moon, and the NASA website has amazing pictures, so if you're a nerd like me and you just want a cool new screensaver, I highly recommend their website. But with the lunar platform, lunar orbiting platform, that is going to allow access to different points on the moon's surface for your exploratory missions. So it could potentially mean that if you wanted to land in this side of the moon, you could hop down once you've docked with the orbiting platform on a lunar lander, hop down to the moon's surface. When you've done your experiments or your bot has done his experiments, because we expect a lot of this to be done with robots in the initial stages, you can hop back up, dock with the platform, and then as you orbit around the moon's surface, you can end up in a different part of the moon, which is really going to unlock the moon. And considering that only 12 men have so far walked on the planet on the surface of the moon, I really hope to see some future faces that are more diverse, taking their first steps on the moon. And it's not all just about NASA. We've got lots of international space agencies who are doing integral work and collaborating together with other agencies and having this conversation. ISRO is the Indian Space Research Organisation. ESA have created this image with an architectural company called Foster & Partners. Now this is using 3D printing to think about how we could access the surface of the moon and do experiments. And what they've done is they will use the lunar regolith, which is the material found, the dusty material on the surface of the moon, to create the structure of which they'll inflate these domes, drill under the surface so that you're protected from radiation and micrometeorites. And these are just some of the ideas that have been worked on. And this, I think, was made in about 2016. And a lot of these have been in development. And so it's just a really exciting time to see what we're going to start hearing much more about in the public with our journey back to the moon. This literally happened on Thursday, and this was the announcement by the administrator of NASA, who was talking about how they are unlocking commercial partnerships to help us with our journey back to the moon. So companies like SpaceX and Moon Express and many others are now literally, they've said, as early as next year, potentially starting to land back on the moon, which is pretty immense. And then there's Mars, and has everyone here heard of Elon Musk? Raise your hand. Okay, so Elon, as we know, really is passionate about getting to Mars. And I am too, because I think that we need to do it with a conscience. We need to think about the impact we're making on our planet. And for me, it's really personal because I feel like all of the innovation and technology that we're using to drive our sort of exploration and potential access to resources in space, well, wouldn't it be such a shame if an iota of those, if that innovation couldn't be used to help make Earth a better place? And so, to me, it's a no-brainer to have created Naaut because I want to sit in that layer where, as a sort of entrepreneurial, science-savvy person who, by the way, is not a rocket scientist, and you can be in the space sector and not be a rocket scientist, I learned that. If you're able to sort of translate the technology and talk to researchers and help them understand how you can help them, that helps me to plug the gap and gives them access to funding, because scientists don't necessarily have the business skills to understand that they are launching a rocket to Mars, and they should maybe have contingency to have maybe 7 rocket launches lined up in their budget line. Some of them will literally only apply for rounds of money to have one launch, and if that launch fails, like SpaceX's initial launches were, then it's not business savvy enough for you, and you won't be able to test your technology, and that would be such a shame when you're using your resources in your team. So, an epic thing literally happened on Monday. This has happened. My name is now on the surface of Mars. The NASA InSight lander descended onto the planet's surface and has now launched the Mars InSight rover. They live streamed it on Facebook. It was all over YouTube, and I wonder if anyone here managed to watch any of the live stream. Yay, I love it. And so about 2 years ago, I emailed my brother and sister-in-law. I have 3 nieces, one who turns 1 today, who wasn't alive 2 years ago, for me to also get her a ticket. But 2 of my nieces' names are now also engraved on a microchip alongside mine. And those microchips also include the name of 2.4 million people who also applied, and we literally, our names are on the surface of Mars. So I'm a big geek and I love to share these opportunities. So follow me on Twitter. I'm always letting the world know about things like this, because this is how we raise interest amongst our community and our network to really make sure that we can help diversify and break down the access to space that maybe you wouldn't have otherwise been able to see. So further afield from Mars, we have the icy worlds and icy moons and ocean worlds, sorry. And I just wanted to talk about a session I attended in Bremen in Germany, which counts itself as a space city. I went to a session around the challenges and technologies and solutions for exploration of icy and ocean worlds. NASA are planning now for 2040 about how to make sure that we can get to Jupiter's moons, particularly to get to Europa, to see whether there is potentially life on that moon. This is insane. So if there are any technically minded people or problem solvers or design thinkers, we need you to help scientists understand the different types of technology and prototyping that they can help us with. The closest thing we have on Earth to this is probably Antarctica. So I want you to know that you don't have to be a scientist to be involved with projects like this. And there are hackathons that happen all around the UK and Europe where we come together and try to solve problems, but not necessarily with a tech background. But also, if you're a coder, there are so many software requirements that we need for new devices and hardware and satellites that are going up to space. So there's lots of potential for everybody, hopefully in this room, to get involved. And one of Saturn's biggest moons is Titan. And this is an image from the European Space Agency, which is already looking at how you would launch a sort of exploratory device with paddling arms to explore the watery world. And this is stuff that is being talked about by scientists now. And when I'm in the room, and I'm the one that's kind of all entrepreneurial and like all hustly about it, it makes them really uncomfortable. And I'll never forget the conversation I had with a project manager for this, well, I shouldn't say this project, let's scrap that because of sensitivity. And what I love about talking to this community is that they're not afraid to ask you questions about things that they don't understand. And normally you would think talking to someone who's working on like ridiculous space missions would be a bit standoffish, but that hasn't been the case, and that's not what I've found, so don't be afraid. And I'll never forget a project manager asking me what the startup term MVP was. A startup MVP is a minimum viable product. And so for him to be able to listen to what I was saying and us having this intellectual exchange of just ideas and sort of processes and frameworks showed me how much potential there is for the innovation that we perhaps haven't yet seen that could help us to accelerate the space exploration sector much more. And then further afield, we have exoplanets. And exoplanets are star systems that have other planets that also orbit them. And the TROPIS-1 system was discovered last year with the Kepler mission, and they found, I think it's 7 potential Earth-type planets orbiting this star. So it's much further away, but this is where the next generation and our generation can really start to set the foundation for future missions and why we should potentially explore these other worlds. I'm a staunch believer in really looking after our planet first. I really think that we should really protect our planet and use our efforts to really future-proof it, because we want to be able to come back to Earth, even if we've gone to the Moon and Mars and beyond. Now, another thing some of you may have heard about is asteroid mining. And asteroid mining was something I remember talking about 2 years ago, and people were laughing at me. And what I found really interesting is that there's only a finite amount of, say, platinum on the Earth. And we use platinum in the production of our mobile phones, which means as more and more of us are changing our phones and getting new phones, there is only going to be a limited supply of platinum until it potentially runs out. And this was a slide from Planetary Resources, who are right there. They are a asteroid mining company, and they're looking at space resources. And this really, really maps up the potential of how this technology of getting to an asteroid and mining it and bringing it back to Earth could really disrupt our metal markets and financial systems. So it's just things to think about. And then, I think you guys have get it, I'm here to inspire you to join the space sector in any capacity, and there is so many different ways to get involved, and I urge you that if you're in any way passionate, and actually let me ask you guys a question. I think I've been pretty open about when I was little, I always wanted to be an astronaut. Is there anyone in the room who even as an adult wants to be an astronaut someday? Raise your hand. Yay, that makes me so happy. So this is it, there are challenges and there are lots of ways to get involved. One of the ways is obviously to apply to a space program to potentially become an astronaut. One of the future ways to get involved is to book a ticket with Virgin Galactic and Blue Origin, which is run by Amazon's Jeff Bezos, and potentially even Elon Musk with SpaceX, who are looking to really accelerate transportation. But Blue Origin and Virgin Galactic are looking at the sort of space tourism side. And if you haven't seen the film Hidden Figures and you're a coder and you're passionate about space, I'm just going to say, put this on your watch list to watch over the Christmas holidays when you've got some downtime, because it's one of the most inspiring stories that I think I've ever seen. And of course I had to put Star Wars up there, because the creative industries are such a big part of the future of space, and how you can help us with your creative skills, whether it's through design thinking, or telling a story, or really breaking down like with cool graphics, much like the ones that you've seen throughout today's presentation. There is so much scope for like anyone who's passionate in space to use your design skills to hack your way into the industry. And if you're interested in finding out more, I'm obviously around to hear more, and if I don't catch you in person, grab my cards, I'll leave them on the Geek Girl desk. And then one of the key things that I think is really important to mention is the top image, which was an image that I used to represent mental health, because it's one of the things that the space sector is very open to talk about, which is sometimes surprising to people who aren't necessarily from a spacey background. And mental health is obviously very important right now. It's very important going forward, and it will be very important for the rest of our time. But why is it important for space? Well, on the shortest journey to Mars, when the orbits align, it's a 7-month journey. So, can you imagine being in a tiny little pod? You'll have room to stretch and move around, but that pod is your home with your fellow astronauts and explorers for 7 months. Can you imagine how isolating that might be, knowing that you've potentially left every single loved one that you know on this planet to go and take those potential first steps or future steps of being on the surface of Mars and helping humanity take those next steps? So there's lots of work that needs to be done, and there's lots of really cool citizen-run projects that are bringing together people who are interested in helping to solve these projects. There's a really cool event taking place next week by Mars Nation, and it's actually looking at tackling the issue of mental health for space and astronauts. So if anyone is interested, I'll tweet it out and you can check it out. It's a really cool event. You'll meet lots of like non-space people, design thinkers, creatives, space nerds too. I mean, it's held at the British Interplanetary Society, which is also a really epic organization to get involved with. And I've put some of the links just in case anyone wanted to grab some of the references that I've used. And I'm going to just quickly show you this video. I'm hoping I can make it work. Let's see. I know I've got the YouTube link, but I know I've also got it on the drive. So the video before it lines up. Oh, here we go. Right, just to set up the video, if we can get it working, and if not, I can share the link on Twitter, and I'm happy to share my slides with you as well. I really want to show you the potential of the kind of technology that I call frontier technology. The technology that's almost science fiction that we've seen in films such as Avatar, that is really starting to come together now, which potentially could help unlock not only healthcare and medtech, like remote treatment of patients, or traveling from like being in London and being able to be on the surface of a different planet without actually having to leave Earth. It's called Avatar technology, and there's a prize that has been launched by ANA, which is a Japanese airline, It's a massive prize. I think last time I checked, it's like a 10 million prize fund. There are some really cool challenges and prizes where you could potentially earn money. And I truly believe in like multidisciplinary teams coming together to help solve these problems. So if anyone is ever interested or wants to like think about some ideas, I think we should do it and do it for the greater good. So if we can get this going, amazing. Thank you so much. That's it. To end with that, purely because I think it's a brilliant visual representation of the limits and future of frontier technology and innovation. And you saw a woman who literally could touch the surface of the moon, and that regolith I mentioned, that lunar dust, that is such a challenge for us as we go back to the moon. And imagine if you are thinking about traveling to the moon or other planets and you potentially couldn't. If we can unlock technology, much like the technology we're using right now with virtual reality, mixed reality, we can already start inspiring and showing people the potential of future technology. And whilst the avatar problem hasn't been solved yet, and you would potentially have to get robots in situ to explore some of these places, the future is potentially at our fingertips, and it's something I'd love for you to start thinking about today as you explore the technology and the potential applications for our future in space. And I just want to leave this final, there we go. So the only limiting factor is your imagination. Start connecting the dots of people and technology today, and who knows, maybe one day we'll get to meet on the moon, Mars, or someplace much more far-flung in our galaxy. And if you have any questions, please connect with me, and if there are any questions from the audience, I'm happy to answer. Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions?
Firstly, thank you so much. It was really interesting, and that video gave me goosebumps at the end. My question was, as we're moving into space, humans have kind of exploited the Earth's resources. What are the ethics and like the conversations around that that's stopping us from exploiting the moon's
resources?
Resources.
So there is a whole sector that looks at space policy and space law, and there is actually a moon treaty, which is all about, so an asteroid is a potential commercial object, and the legislation in Luxembourg and America, it was a bi-party like legal thing that went through the American government as well, that if you're able to physically grab something in space, so not the moon or a planet, you can grab an asteroid and commercially mine it, then you potentially own the income that you generate, probably subject to tax. when you come back on Earth. And I think the fact that America has unlocked the commercial opportunities for the moon is going to kick off another space race. And I think we do have to think about the ethics, and it's really important, and a lot of these discussions happen. And there are some conversations that have been talking about the heritage sites of the Apollo missions on the surface of the moon as our human history and how they should be preserved. And also, I know that NASA and ESA consciously, and other space agencies and some commercial enterprises do care about recycling and being sustainable. And we've seen that with Blue Origin and SpaceX by creating these rocket launch systems or transportation systems that are reusable. So they're kinder to the environment as well. So I think a lot of these conversations are going to arise, and I'm really glad you asked that question today, because I think it's up to us, knowing what the political climate is currently in the UK, that conversations that impact us as humans, it doesn't matter whether we're part of the EU at this point or not, because really the future of those potential objects in the space are equally mine as much as they're yours and our future generations. So we do need to work together to helping to preserve them. Yeah. Any other questions?
One more. No? Well, then we're on time. So.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anushka.